Hey guys, so here's the video you've all been wondering about. Why did I join the Legion? Why I left the Legion. I'm gonna try to make this, quick and painless here. So I might say some things that some of you guys don't want to hear, but everything is, it's my opinion, but it is also fact. It is what I saw. So to get started, I served in the Canadian Forces, and then I was kicked out for, I got arrested a few years ago. One crazy drunken night, and shit just went sideways real hard, real fast, and that was a long, painful process. But I mean, in between, after that, I was really unhappy. I was looking for, I had civilian work. I did everything from working in a restaurant. I worked, I picked up dead bodies for a while. I did a lot of different things. Construction, concrete, like just a lot of different stuff, and I just was not happy with any of it. So I figured, like I really want to go back into the military. That'll never happen for me back in Canada. Possibly later in my 30s, maybe, but highly unlikely. And I'm hoping I have my life, in a better place then, so I don't need to go back. Um, so yeah, I was really like, what, the Foreign Legion is my answer. So I worked up for it for a while, and I finally, I suffered some injuries and had to recover from those before I was like ready to go. So that kind of set me back a little bit, but I had everything squared away real quick, and then I took off. I joined the Legion last November, and I was gung ho, just like the rest of you guys are. I wanted to be there. I had every intention. I just wanted to do 5 years though. That was my thing. Some of you guys want to be lifers. That's cool, but I mean, basically, throughout my duration in the Legion, I was really unimpressed by the leadership. I was really unimpressed with the quality of the guys that were showing up. Some of you guys from North America here who come from, real armies, British military, American, Canadian, like real militaries, you know, it's 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 not like that at all. You're getting a lot of guys who have no other options, so they're turning to the Legion to be their answer. So you're producing like a very low quality soldier, and you're in the trenches with these guys, and it's sad. Uh, I mean, on one of our modules, the guy beside me, he was Nepalese, and he was crying because me firing my rifle was too loud for him. And it's just a lot of shit like that, and it was depressing. Like, I was going in, I was expecting to be one of like the worst guys, and I ended up placing 6 overall. The only thing I really wasn't good at was the massive amount of running. But other than that, like as a soldier, that was just something I've always been good at. And that's why I loved it, and that's why I really wanted to go back to it. And a lot of these guys have no idea what it's like to be a soldier, like zero discipline, and they band together, right? So like I was the only North American, so I didn't have a ton of friends. Whereas you've got the South Americans are all friends, you've got the Ruskies are all friends, you've got just all the major groups, they're all friends, they all look after each other, and they're just shitheads together, some of them too. And I'm not saying they all are, but when you get a group of dudes and they're all like-minded like that, and some of these guys are just kids, and it's just, I mean, by the end of the 4 months, I couldn't believe how ill-disciplined some of these guys were still. It was, frick, I remember 2 weeks into my basic training in Canada, and guys were squared the fuck away. It's just not like that there, and it really made it hard to want to be there. And I spent a lot of time thinking about it too, and one of the big things that I really, really did think about was how, the military life is physically difficult, and at times it is a bit of a mind fuck, but I mean, mentally, it's not as hard as a civilian world. Like, the military life dictates every single thing you do. I mean, when you breathe, when you eat, when you sleep, boom, boom, boom. It's very simple and straightforward, and I kind of miss some of that structure, and I realized I was just too afraid to be something else in the world, and I used my record as an excuse not to be anything for a really long time, and I sort of thought like, oh, the Legion will be my answer, and And then the other thing that really, really got to me was, after the 5 years, because that's all I wanted to spend there is just the 5 years. You don't leave with anything that translates into the world, because they really want guys who are going to stick around for, you know, 7, 10, 20 years, not guys who come for 5. So you don't get a lot of qualifications that translate over into the civilian world in that first 5 years. And it made me think, like, man, I'm going to be almost 30 by the time I'm done with nothing. All my friends are graduating university, getting houses, getting cars, getting married. And I was like, I'm going to be so far behind. And not that I think life is about having all that stuff, but it's not something I want to come home to have nothing. I don't want to come home with nothing and move into my parents' basement, The other big thing, too, was, I was an alcoholic before in the military, partially what led me to some of my problems. And then after, I realized, like, the lifestyle there, it would be the same. I'd fall into the same rut, and I would make the same mistakes, and I knew that. I kind of had the idea, like, I'll put 50% of all my paychecks away, send them home, and I realized, like, over the course of being just on that training, the amount of money I spent was ridiculous, and it would have been much worse at Regiment, and I just figured it's not worth my time. It's not worth my time. I can be so much more than what the Legion has to offer me, and I know a lot of you guys don't want to hear that, but it is true. And it just, the one thing I will say, the Legion is definitely tough, and the physical standard is definitely up there, which was a lot of fun. It was a blast. However, just the quality of the guy overall was just not anything. I wouldn't want to be stuck in anywhere in combat with about 90% of the guys I dealt with. Most of the guys I talked to who'd been in for a few years were pretty miserable. The guys who, American, Canadian, South African, the guys that I got to know a little bit, that I met, like, outside of my section, like other Legionnaires and stuff, training in Castel, they basically, a lot of them that had stuck around said, they're just doing it because they did it and they're just going to finish the 5 years. But I think, you can definitely go that way. Like, I almost didn't want to leave because I was too afraid to leave. And I think that's what happens to a lot of guys, is they're too afraid to leave. So if you guys go, do it, but don't be afraid to leave if it's not something you're really gonna enjoy. Like, it's just not worth it. It's 5 years of fucking just shit. It's just not. It's not a military unit like what we have here. A lot of guys are coming from nothing. I talked to a few guys who, from Brazil and stuff, and they said if they had something better, they would leave. They would leave in a heartbeat. Like, very few guys I talked to wanted to be there, and a lot of the guys that are there, who are good dudes, they leave after the 5 years. So all the guys running the show, corporal chefs, sergeants, sergeant chefs, and up, right? They're all just fucked up, like, in the head. Like, they're different, and, like, the Legion is very, very, very traditional in an old school sense that, like, the sergeants, as a Legionnaire, like, you treat a sergeant like they're like an officer, basically. Like, everyone from sergeant and up, you salute, which I think is crazy. And just some of that shit just really got on my nerves. I just grew to have very little respect for the whole system. And at the end of the day, I love Canada and I don't love France. So fuck it, I'm gonna do something here. Got a few projects on the go now that are actually helping me, get back into civilian life, and I'm actually enjoying it. I'm looking at life a whole new way, and it's been positive. I don't regret going, because it helped me come to these decisions. But yeah, like, just, if you're going, do it. I needed to go, absolutely, I did. you know, I read tons of stuff that said, you know, it's not going to be what you want, this and this. But, you know, I had to, if you're like me, you're going to have to go find out for yourself as well. But if you come to the same conclusions, by no means feel bad. You know, I know a guy, you know, an ex-Royal Marine, he quit because he felt the same. An ex-Russian soldier, he quit with me as well because he felt the same. You know, no, none of us deserted. We asked to leave. Your first year, you can ask to leave almost any time. I waited till after training, and I requested to leave in Oban. But during selection, I was already feeling, just looking at the quality of the candidates around me, I already felt like it wasn't gonna be anything spectacular, and it ended up being that way. But I had to test the water, and I'm happy I did. No regrets at all. But I'm moving on with my life now, and I hope you guys either find what you need there, or, you know, or you come home and do something better. So it's entirely up to you. I'm not dissing the Legion by any means. I'm just saying how I felt and what I saw, and I'll let you guys come up with your own conclusions. But if you feel the same way, don't feel bad at all for wanting to say, I'm gonna go make something else of myself. I know none of that's probably what any of you guys wanted to hear, but it is how I feel. I hope this, you know, quick little video sort of summed that up for you guys. Feel free to post, comment, you know, ask questions, you know, just like in the past videos. You know, I imagine I'll probably get some heat from some of this. You know, I can't imagine everyone's gonna like what I have to say, but it's just how she goes, eh?